backlash for this post. In the post, I asked, why is a Navy sailor aboard a historic Navy ship, the USS Constitution, tall ship in Boston Harbor, why is he wearing Army camouflage? Getting a lot of backlash from this. And I want to explain why, yes, this post is sarcastic, but important nonetheless. And here's why. So of course I know that he is wearing Navy camouflage. The Navy NWUs, Navy Working Uniform Type 3 they're called, is the latest iteration of a Navy camouflaged uniform. And this is authorized. It is authorized to work in shore duty, and we can debate whether being aboard a floating ship is shore duty or not, but that is besides the point. I know that the Navy camouflage pattern is different from the Army camouflage pattern. Navy has its own pattern. But the point is not the specifics of the individual camouflage pattern. There is a deeper, more systemic problem involved in this debate. And that problem is really brought out in this excellent book by Professor Andrew Lambert called Sea Power States. And in this book, he looks at the British Empire, but also before that, the Venetian merchants and sea power states throughout history. And what he talks about in this is the importance of maritime trade, of shipping, that the core of an empire, an economic empire, is really the ability to move goods throughout the world. And we know that the shipping container is the invention that has lifted more people out of poverty than any other invention in the world. It is the low-cost merchant shipping that is essential to world trade and improving everyone's lives. So what does this have to do with Navy camouflage? Well, in the book, he specifically states how when a civilization loses its connection to the sea, we stop funding a Navy. And when a Navy is not properly funded, then merchant shipping is not funded. And when merchant shipping, the protection of merchant ships, is not funded, world trade breaks down around the edges. And Andrew Lambert specifically says what made the British Empire successful is not only all of government, but all of civilization approach to the importance of sea power. You know, you had ships being printed on money and big statues to people like Nelson in Trafalgar Square. You had little kids wearing naval uniforms, and the entire civilization. You had movies and books about the Navy and sea power. And this bleeding into civilization, that the British were a maritime nation, got everyone on the same page and encouraged them, got little kids excited about joining the Navy. It got merchants and bankers excited about funding Navy and commercial ships. This whole of government, whole of civilization approach is important because it reminds the average citizen that navies are important and tied to economic trade. And when you see a Navy sailor in a traditional Navy sailor uniform, that reminds you of the importance of the Navy. It reminds you to invest and call your congressman and talk about ships. And when we lose that, world trade can fall apart, which is exactly what we're seeing now in the Red Sea after 20 years of global war on terror, where all of the services, not just the Navy, but also the Air Force and even the Coast Guard, and now my own Merchant Marine at the Merchant Marine Academy is wearing camouflage. And I know these individual organizations have their own camouflage profile, but to the average citizen, to the average person who's in Boston Harbor visiting the Constitution, they look like they are part of the Army. They look like they are still fighting the global war on terror. And that is especially dangerous because it's the Fleet Weeks in New York and San Francisco with Navy sailors walking around in Navy uniform, not camouflage, that resonates with the public, that gets journalists to write stories about the Navy, gets producers to fund films about the Navy, and that leads to Navy funding. And now when you see the Coast Guard Commandant in Bahrain at a state meeting with a high-level government official with camouflage, when you see the CNO of the Navy wearing camouflage out in public, to the average citizen, and I understand the difference, right? I know most of you who follow me understand the difference, but to the average citizen, it's confusing. They think it's Army. And regardless if they think it's Army or not, their train of thought, their mind process goes to the Army. It's absolutely critical, therefore, that the Navy has a traditional Navy uniform. The Air Force should as well. And we're seeing this in the budget battle where the Army is consuming a larger percentage of the budget or a full equal percentage, and we're not able to build those ships. And this is absolutely essential for recruiting. We think the kids get excited about camouflage, and they do. Little boys love camouflage, but some boys, like the Navy, see the Navy uniform. Their uncle or their cousin might be in Navy, and they see that traditional uniform, and they want to specifically join the Navy. So it's important. It's important for a broader culture. It's especially important for the people who go out of their way to visit the Constitution with their little kids, to see Navy sailors and say, this is a possibility. We are an island nation. Let's get excited about maritime and Navy. And I think the Navy itself is doing itself a huge disservice by having so many sailors. I get it if you're a Navy SEAL, if you're an EOD, if you're a Seabee. But that sailor wearing a sailor uniform is the best recruiting poster the U.S. Navy could possibly have. But to a little kid, when he sees the green camouflage, he's thinking Army, he's not thinking Navy. So I think this is a critically important topic.